Yes, my friends, things are heating up behind the scenes at the Detroit Lions. After a free agency window that began with modest expectations and strategic caution, Detroit Lions GM Brad Holmes left the NFL owners' meeting visibly energized and, by his own admission, more than just pleased. His detailed analysis offers a unique window into the mindset of the Lions front office, from budget constraints to future planning, and is something every Lions fan needs to hear. Let's break it down. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Do you think Brad Holmes should remain the Lions GM? If so, hit the like button. If not, comment below with your opinion. In any case, comment something like, "Go Lions! I want to see you at the Super Bowl." Now, let's get to the point. Holmes was clear. The Lions were never going to be big spenders in free agency this year. In fact, going into the offseason, the front office braced for a quiet approach due to looming financial responsibilities. The metaphor he used was, "You can't take the vacation you really want this summer because the bills are coming." That's a nod to extensions for core young talent, like Aidan Hutchinson, Jameson Williams, and others whose rookie deals are starting to transition into premium paydays. But somehow, Detroit managed to pull off more than even Holmes expected. They landed a top-tier cornerback in what he called a corner market that had a $16 million entry fee. To walk away with a high-impact defensive lineman and retain key players like TP, all within those budget limits, Holmes gave major credit to Charlie Atkins and the financial crew for maneuvering that chessboard to perfection. A huge theme throughout Holmes's comments was internal development and belief in their own guys. While fans are always clamoring for splashy new signings, Holmes emphasized that they stack their own players against league-wide rankings. Sometimes an external name might be more well-known, but the internal guy might actually rank higher on their board. It's not about flash. It's about fit and upside. That's the context for some of the more under-the-radar returns and signings. Getting DJ Reader back was a major win, especially considering the money flying around the defensive market. Holmes was almost giddy talking about it, saying he almost did a backflip. Bringing back key depth pieces like Roy Lopez and investing in versatile veterans like Avonte Maddox and Amik Robertson builds out a defensive line and secondary that's becoming seriously deep. And he reminded everyone, Hutchinson is one of those elite edge rushers, one of the best 5 in the entire league, in his words. Holmes wants fans to recognize that even if there wasn't a high-profile DE signing, there's belief in Hutch and in the return of Levi Onwuzurike and Marcus Davenport to bolster the pass rush.
The GM also spoke candidly about the balance of adding veterans versus letting young players take over. At this point, the Lions have a roster full of exciting second- and third-year players who haven't gotten full snaps yet but are ready to take that next step. There's clear excitement about the upside of guys like Josh Paschal, expected to shift back more to the interior, and Sione Mahogany, who's viewed as a legitimate starting guard candidate after an encouraging, if limited, rookie year. Holmes admitted that Mahogany is still young and will need competition, but his ability to play both left and right guard gives the Lions options. And then there's Hendon Hooker. There was no sugarcoating. Hooker wasn't ready last year, and that's why Teddy Bridgewater was brought in. But now, Holmes is setting the tone for a real QB2 competition. If Hooker wants it, he'll have to earn it. The Lions like his makeup, but nothing is being handed out. As for the names that got away, one key departure was Zadarius Smith. Holmes was honest about it. It came down to finances. Smith was productive, and the Lions wanted to keep him, but the cap space wasn't there. It wasn't a matter of value. It was a matter of math. And Smith understood. The most illuminating moment might have come when Holmes acknowledged how much behind-the-scenes planning goes into balancing short-term moves with long-term sustainability. They're budgeting years ahead. Every decision made today impacts 2026 and 2027. It's why, even when fans are itching for big signings, the Lions are holding firm. Holmes wants to keep the team's core intact, and that means being disciplined now to avoid losing foundational pieces later. And that includes current contract discussions. The Lions are expected to pick up the 5th-year option on Penei Sewell and are actively working on what Holmes calls hopefully a lot of extensions. Kirby Joseph's name came up, too. He's a player they absolutely want to keep, and they've let his camp know that. But Holmes reiterated that everything has to align financially. Again, that vacation analogy, if you blow your money now, you can't take care of the house or the kids' college fund. All of this points to a front office that's not only building a winner but doing it with a clear long-term vision. Holmes and Dan Campbell have developed a culture of belief, from player development to talent evaluation to internal communication. There's excitement about the coaches, even with changes, and about young guys rising through the ranks not just on the field, but in the front office too. Lions fans, this wasn't a flashy free agency, but it might have been one of the smartest. What do you think? Are you on board with Brad Holmes' disciplined approach? Do you believe in the youth movement, or would you have liked to see more big names added? Let's hear it in the comments. And speaking of youth and development, Holmes made one thing crystal clear. This offseason isn't just about plugging holes. It's about raising the floor across the entire roster. He mentioned how critical it is to continue building depth, especially on the defensive line, and how that depth proved vital during last season's grind. Injuries hit hard, but the Lions were able to keep fighting because of the guys behind the starters. Now, with key players returning and new ones added, the defensive front looks heavy, in a good way. Players like Josh Paschal, who had to play out of position last season due to injuries, will now be able to slide into more natural roles. Holmes is confident that getting players back healthy, like Levi Onwuzurike and Marcus Davenport, will make a huge difference. And that confidence isn't just hopeful thinking. Holmes talked about Levi's rolling pressures before his injury and is banking on him converting more of those into sacks this year. Then there's the secondary. It's not just about bringing in new faces, it's about finding the right ones. The addition of Amon-Ra Robertson, who brings man-to-man coverage ability and fits the Lions' aggressive defensive style, was a calculated move. Holmes emphasized how well these pieces align with the identity of the team, using Maddox as another example. He's a guy who can play nickel, offers safety flexibility, and contributes on special teams, versatility that adds value well beyond the stat sheet. And when it comes to the trenches, Holmes isn't ignoring the offense either. He spoke at length about Sione Mahogany's development and what the future holds. While the Lions believe Mahogany has starting-level potential, they're not handing him the job. That's why they brought back veteran depth like Halapoulivaati Vaitai, Yodi, and are still keeping an eye on the veteran market. Holmes hinted that competition is key, and even with 73 players currently on the roster, he's not ruling out making moves if it means upgrading the squad. That ties directly into the Lions' approach to the draft. Holmes was candid about the possibility of trading up, trading down, or simply letting the board come to them. He recalled last year's Day 3, when he unexpectedly traded into the 4th round twice to land players he felt strongly about. That kind of flexibility is still in play, even with a nearly full roster. And yes, if a can't-miss prospect becomes available, it could mean parting ways with a player who hasn't yet had a chance to show his full potential. It's a tough part of the business, but Holmes framed it as a necessary risk in the pursuit of building a contender. Now let's pivot to some big names and big financial decisions. Jameson Williams and Penei Sewell both loom large in the Lions' future. The team is expected to pick up Sewell's 5th-year option, and Williams, who's still scratching the surface, is someone they want to keep around. Holmes sees tremendous upside in both and made it clear that while extensions are on the table, nothing is guaranteed. Why? Because wide receivers cost a lot, and so do elite tackles, and so will guys like Aidan Hutchinson, Kirby Joseph, and several others who are tracking toward major paydays. And with that, I want to hear from you, Lions Nation. Are you bought into this long-term vision? Do you trust Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell to keep this momentum rolling without mortgaging the future? Or would you prefer to see more immediate upgrades, even if it costs more down the line? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this offseason is about way more than transactions. It's about transformation. Go Lions!